Namaste. So far, we have seen illusion, the Mimansa notion of akhyati, right? That because it best supports all cognition is valid at birth. This is the akhyati notation of Mimansa. Now we will come to inference and we will see the core model of Sabar and Kumaril. Sabar's idea is that if we know a fixed or permanent relation between two things, then on perceiving one, we can think of the other. That is inference. Therefore, inference is dependent on establishing a stable relation, which we have called vyapti in logic, right? So for Kumaril refines it. Kumaril says that we notice many things where two things, that is, let's say smoke and fire, they occur together in a third thing, let's say kitchen or hill. And this coexistence should be independent. It should not be dependent upon some special condition, right? Then once that relation is fixed in the memory, perception of one term in locus can produce inference of another term in that locus. Now we have some standard inferential roles. First is the gamya. So gam is what is to be inferred. It is fire in this case. Then second we have gamak or vyapak. So gamak or vyapak is the sign or indicator whose presence is perceived. Let's say smoke. And then we have paksha, which is the locus or site under consideration, let's say the hill. And we have a condition that only because the gamak is perceived in the paksh, the gamya can be inferred there, right? Only because the gamak, which is a sign indicator, can be perceived in the paksh, which is the locus or site, then the gamya, which is the what is to be inferred. So only then can gamya be inferred there. And uh, now the general universal that wherever smoke there is fire, this cannot be the direct cause of inference, because that universal itself is already a kind of inferred or general cognition, right? So that's the thing. Uh, so inference proceeds from a present perception, that is smoke on hill, plus a memory of the established relation from the past cases. So how inference flows is, the engine is the perception plus the remembered relation. That is not, it is, inference is not about an explicit syllogistic law. Then Kumaril says that inference produces new cognition. That is, even if we knew generally that smoke goes with fire, the specific this hill has fire was not known until the smoke was perceived on this hill. Therefore, Anuman is a Praman, which is Anuman is a knowledge source. Why? Because it delivers a new determinate knowledge about a particular case. Then we must also check the negative correlations, that is, no smoke is associated with no fire. So noting cases where the relation fails is also important, but a full negative relation knowledge is not indispensable in every case for forming the permanent relation. Why? Because the repeated uniform experiences and the absence of known counter examples can create firm expectation, right? uh, so so basically it is, we form the inferential confidence by many positive associations plus no observed defeats, right? So a full negative relation knowledge so in the case, uh, this is very similar to the current Popperian notion of falsifiability, right? So now here is raised a very important question, that if inference depends on memory of relation and memory is not a praman, so does inference lose its self-valid status? Now to this, Kumaril says that memory is not invalid. It's just not a praman because it doesn't give a new knowledge. Inference is still praman because it does give new knowledge, right? And it's not mere perception because only the gamak is seen. Therefore, swatah praman is preserved here also. The inference is valid as it arises, and memory is only a supporting conditions. So, for explicit statements to convince others, that is for Pararthanuman, both Kumaril and Prabhakar accept that three statements are sufficient. The first is the Pratigya or thesis, second is the Hetu or reason, third is the Drishtant or example. So, the two kinds of inference are, first is the Pratyakshato Drashta Sambandha, where the permanent relation is observed through two concrete things. That is, we observe a permanent relation between smoke and fire. And second is the Samanyato Drashta Sambandh, where the relation is observed not between two concrete things but between general notions. Right? So we'll see the examples. Uh, Now we have a somewhat distinct, a different take on inference by Prabhakar. So for Prabhakar, there is the third locus is not central for Prabhakar to form an inference, to form an inference. So Prabhakar does not emphasize the need for the two terms. No, Prabhakar does not emphasize that the two terms must be remembered as coexisting in a third thing. So for Prabhakar, the essential thing is simply that there should be a stable relation between the two terms, and the place, time, or locus is just treated as an adjunct that qualifies the norms and not the core structure. And Prabhakar stresses something like smoke's concomitance with fire may be treated as conditional, right? Smoke and fire occurring together, it is a conditional, but fire's concomitance with smoke in the inferential context is treated as an unconditional or firm for the inferential move. So the point is to explain that why smoke immediately forces the concept of fire once the conviction is fixed. Now, Prabhakar classifies fallacies of minor term or thesis or of example, and he seems to be influenced by some broader Indian logic, right? So, as per Prabhakar, Praman need not give any new knowledge. So, if the cognition of smoke includes cognition of fire, then inference gives nothing new. But to this Prabhakar, did you understand this objection well? Let's repeat it once again, that Prabhakar eloquently says that Praman need not give, matlab, first let's forget Prabhakar for a while. We have told that inference should give a new knowledge, right? But Prabhakar also says that knowledge of smoke includes the cognition of fire. So by that logic, it is not a new, knowledge being generated right there. But Prabhakar ob- says that this objection is very weak because Prabhakar does not insist at all that Praman must give new knowledge. For Prabhakar, Praman is simply apprehension. So, um, inferential cognition counts as Praman because it apprehends firmly and doubtlessly, even if the content is in some case already implicated. So, here we can see a deep divergence from Kumaril's new knowledge criterion. Then we have an analogy, that is Upaman, and about, Upaman means analogy. So we have a discussion about Upaman and Arthapatti. Upaman, as Mimansa accepts it, is what we'll see. So let's say a person knows a cow or go, and then he goes to a forest and there he sees a wild ox or gavai and he notes similarity. Then he cognizes that this gavai is similar to the cow I know. Now Mimamsa treats this as a separate praman because it allows us to apprehend a similarity relation where one term, that is cow, was not presently perceived. Now it is not a memory because at the earlier time the gavai wasn't seen and similarity wasn't available to be remembered, right? Uh, and there is a debate between Prabhakar and Kumaril again on what is similarity. So Kumaril treats similarity just as a quality, that is many objects sharing the same set of qualities, but Prabhakar treats similarity as a distinct category, right? So but both agree that Upman is a Praman, but they, disagree about the metaphysics of similarity. So for Kumaril, similarity is just a quality, and for Prabhakar, similarity is a distinct category. Then we have a section on why Mimansa needs Arthapatti as a distinct Praman. So we'll see it with a nice analogy here. Let's get introduced to a man named Devdutt. So we know Devdutt is alive, right? And when we perceive that he is not in the house where he commonly used to be, he used to live there. So to reconcile these two things, we postulate that he must exist somewhere outside. So arthpatti is the cognition produced by the need to resolve an incompatibility. Arthpatti is not deduction, nor is it perception, and nor is it inference in the narrow sign based sense. Hence it is a new praman. Now, Kumaril and Prabhakar disagree on the psychology of Arthpatti. So, Prabhakar says that if Devdutt is usually in the house, but let's say is not found there, our previous notion of Devdutt being alive becomes doubtful. Now, this absence doesn't directly cause Arthpatti or implication, rather, it sows seeds of doubt and forces the mind towards the only resolution, that Devdutt must be elsewhere, right? So Prabhakar explains Arthpatti as a doubt removal mechanism driven by inconsistency. So uh, so mind cannot digest that, we know that Devdutt is alive, we can't find him in his house, so mind cannot digest this situation without a new cognition. Therefore Devdutt must be somewhere outside. So this new cognition is Arthpatti. It is not a direct perception, it is, not a standard inference from a sign. It's a forced explanatory postulate required to make the situation coherent. Now Prabhakar explains the psychology like this, that Devdutt is alive, it is known. Devdutt is not in the house, this is perceived. Then this absence perception creates doubt about the earlier knowledge that maybe he's not alive at all. And to remove that doubt, we introduce this perception that he must be alive somewhere else. So notice the flow for Prabhakar. It is absence, which leads to doubt about life, which leads to presumption of outside existence to remove doubt. Kumarel's objection is to this is that Prabhakar's doubt story doesn't uniquely lead to outside. So Kumaril attacks Prabhakar sharply here. He says that if absence creates doubt about Devdutt being alive, then the doubt could be resolved equally by supposing that Devdutt is indeed dead. So Devdutt's doubt removal mechanism doesn't explain why the mind must land on outside existence and not death. Then Kumaril flips the direction. Kumaril says that the mind can presume outside existence only when the doubt about Devdutt being alive has already been removed by other means, like previous assurance or some additional information. Once he is alive is settled, then the absence from house is incompatible with that certainty. Then the mind is pushed to assume that he's outside. So for Kumaril, the flow is like this, that certainty of life plus the perception of absence, this leads to contradiction, which which requires us to presume that he is somewhere outside. So it is not that simply doubt leads to presumption. So what makes Arthpatti different from inference? We have a section on this. So if Arthpatti is presuming something to resolve a conflict, isn't it just inference? Now, so in inference or anuman, we have a hetu, which is a reason or sign known first, like smoke, and we have a sadhya, which is to be proved thing, inferred later, and both are graspable as different distinct items. In Arthpatti, if we see an absent Devdutt, we cannot, the situation cannot even be coherently comprehended unless we already presume the missing fact, that is, his existence outside. So the presumption is not a later optional step, it is what makes the situation no graspable or intelligible at all. So the mark of Arthpatti here is that there should be a perceived or known fact and it should not be internally contradicted with the prior knowledge, and the perception is required to save the comprehension itself. Notice that you cannot comprehend absent Devdutt unless you already presume the missing fact. So this is the difference between Arthpatti and Anuman. So by Arthpatti we are led to admit some unseen explanatory factors like a special potency in seeds by which they produce shoots, or a special potency in sacrifices by which they yield heavenly or beneficial results. Now, this is important because Mimansa needs a bridge from the visible ritual action now to the promised results later, which is often unseen. So, this means that Arthpati becomes one of the epistemic tools for accepting those connecting potencies, right? Um, then we have uh, uh, a section on the Shabd Praman, why testimony is a Praman and why the Veda is special. So, what Shabd as a Praman means? So, Shabd is accepted as a separate means of knowledge by most Indian systems, with exceptions named, like Jain, Charvak, Vaishesika, or Buddhist. So, it gives a knowledge of things not within the range of perception by understanding sentences and the meanings of their words. The two kinds of sentences are, first it's the human utterances, and second is the Vedic sentences. Now, as per Mimamsa, human testimony is valid when spoken by a trustworthy person. But on the other hand, Vedic testimony is valid in itself. That is, Vedic testimony is intrinsically authoritative. So, Mimamsa does not ground the Vedas' authority in God or a divine, divine author. So, Mimamsa aims to prove that the Vedas are not written by anyone. Vedas have no beginning and are eternal, and therefore the authority is not derived from any speaker's trustworthiness. Rather, the words are valid in themselves. Now, this is where the concept of Swatah Praman becomes sort of like the epistemic backbone for Vedic authority. Now, why should Shabd be treated as an independent Praman? So, we already we may already know the word meanings beforehand, but the meanings of sentence, especially how they are related, the words in a sentence are related, especially the relational meaning, how A stands in relation R to B, this cannot be comprehended by any other acknowledged praman. So even if someone says that sentence validity can be inferred from the trustworthiness of the speaker, uh, this doesn't explain the core phenomena, that is how we understand sentence meaning, right? So even when we don't know who the speaker writer is. So Shabd is defended not merely as belief in speakers, but as a unique cognitive route to relational knowledge, right? Uh, Now, as per Prabhakar, the meaning arises from letters plus a special potency. So, as per Prabhakar's view begins with phonetics. He says that sounds are in the form of letters, or they are understood as combination of letters, and individual letters alone don't yield meaning. Individual letters are just auditory elements, but the letters possess a potency, and through the successive impressions they produce comprehension of the whole word and its meaning. The mechanism described is that each letter or sound vanishes as soon as it is uttered, but each letter or sound leaves an impression, and those impressions combine with the later ones, and this leads to a grasp of the word as a whole. So both Prabhakar and Kumaril, they have an agreement that the potency originates in the letters. This makes letter potency the direct cause of verbal cognition. So now we have a peculiar doctrine that words have natural denotative powers by their own nature. They refer to, that is, by what do you mean by words having natural denotative powers? That is words by their own nature refer to certain objects whether or not the hearer understands. Now, Mimamsa is very clear that it rejects the idea that meanings are assigned by social convention for all words. Convention is admitted, but it is only for the proper names. This supports the next claim that words are eternal, but they need a manifesting agency like the speaker's effort to become audible or available. Now, speaker's effort produces the word, but it merely manifests the ever existing word. Now, that is, speech is just disclosure. By speech, you don't create a word. Now we have a classic debate which defines the two Mimamsa schools. Again, we'll see a debate between the two doyens of Mimamsa, that is Prabhakar and Kumaril. So Prabhakar's theory here is Anvit Bidhanavad. So Anvit Bidhanavad, that is, meaning is inherently connected. So if Prabhakar tells, Prabhakar's learning story, let's see. So a senior commands a junior to bring a cow and bind a horse. So the child or the junior notices the action and learns the meaning of cow and horse only in injunctive sentences. Only in injunctive sentences, that is only to, injunctive means sentences which order. From this, he concludes that the words denote things only as related to the sentence purpose or other factors of the injunction. Taken together, a word does not yield its denotation, it denotes only a part of the connected sentential meaning. So go in gum ane does not mean a gum ane means bring the cow. So go, the word go in gum ane does not mean cow as a freestanding object. It means cow as an object of bringing, that is, cow specified by a relation to the commanded action. This is Prabhakar's Anvita Bhidanavad, that is, words signify only in relation. Kumaril has an opposite view, that is abhi, abhihitan vayavad. Abhihitan vayavad, that is words first, then followed by connection. So words independently express their meanings first, and then those independently given meanings are combined or connected into a single, sentential idea. So, for Kumaril in Gum Ane, gum independently means bovine class, or, and Ane means independently bring. And then after these two words, uh, uh, have been perceived as such, then the mind connects them into one coherent instruction, that is abhihitan vayavad, that is what is said first is then connected. Now this no this might for example, if we see Ferdinand Saussure in the Western philosophy, we might try to compare. There is an idea there that words are, the meaning of words are just socially denoted. For example, a dog is called in different, languages by different names. We have dog or Schwan or Hund or Shavaya. So Mimamsa claims that words have natural denotative power or Shakti, and they are not conventional. So if you say that now we'll systematically, you know, try to distangle this argument that words are merely, words have a meaning only because of social conventions. We'll separate three things. First is the object or universal, which is the dog kind or Shwanatva. Second is the word or sound form, which is the shabd, and third is our access to the word, that is learning manifestation in a community. Once we keep these apart, the different languages fact doesn't refute the doctrine within their own framework, though it does force them into a particular kind of explanation. So Mimamsa actually, when Mimamsa says that words are not conventional, it does not mean that there can be only one word for an object in the whole world. It means that a word that exists has its meaning by nature, that is, its Shakti is intrinsic to that word and that word only. not because society assigns that meaning arbitrarily. So, word to meaning, this link is not created by convention. It is not object to one unique word globally, right? So, how can different words all mean dog? That is, then to this Mimansa would say that there are many eternally existing words. So word isn't created by humans, it is eternal, and the speaker's utterance merely manifests it. So they can say that Schwan, Hund, dog are distinct eternal words. Each has its own natural denotative power, and communities differ in which eternal words they habitually manifest or teach. So not one object with many assigned names, but many naturally meaningful words which are selectively used by different speech communities. Now, what is the role of convention at all then? So, Mimamsa tries to minimize the role of convention, but it cannot eliminate the social factors entirely. So, it relocates the convention away from meaning creation into usage or availability. So, convention determines which word gets adopted in a community's practice and therefore which word a child hears and learns. But the convention does not manufacture the word's meaning. So meaning is intrinsic to that word, but society determines exposure to that word. So in different languages, we have different words. That is true. So different languages becomes a sociological fact about different exposure patterns. It is not a semantic fact about a meaning being arbitrary. So, what does natural meaning mean here if it is not one to one? So, natural meaning, by natural meaning, we mean that given a word, it points naturally to its meaning. But that leaves open the fact that many words can point to the same meanings, that is synonymy. And one word can point to different meanings in different contexts, that is polysemy. Though Mimansa has its own machinery for disambiguation. So this dog Schwanhund cases synonymy across languages, but no, they aren't invented synonyms. They are independently meaningful shabdas, and each have their own shakti. Okay. So now another good objection to this argument would be that new words are coined all the time. So if words are eternal and meanings are natural, how can new terms or slangs arise? So Mimamsaks would say to this that what we are coining is either a new combination of already existing sound elements or letters whose denotative capacity is grounded in those eternal sound forms, or a proper name case where they do follow convention, or a case of secondary meaning, lakshan or figurative extension. So we are not making a new primary denotation, right? So does this so explanation actually succeed? So in if we look at their metaphysics, it's coherent, right? Because uh, many words many meaningful words exist, and different societies manifest different subsets, and learning is exposure based. So from a modern linguistics viewpoint, it is a heavy metaphysical cost, eternal words plus intrinsic denotation, to explain something that convention explains cheaply, right? So Mimamsa accepts that cost. Uh, what is that cost? That rather than just admitting some sort of convention while naming, you point out to some internal words plus intrinsic denotation. So Mimamsaks accept that cost because they need it to support a bigger project, and that project is authorless or eternal Veda, and therefore non-human linguistic authority. Therefore, there should be intrinsic Shabd Pramanya, especially for the Dhan. So it is built to underwrite the Vedic authority. So whichever side you take, Kumaril or Prabhakar, Kumaril says that words first give meanings independently, then the sentence connection happens. Prabhakar says that words give meaning only as connected in a sentence. but both will still say that the multilingual variation is fine, because different word forms can have different fixed meanings, and communities differ in which word forms they employ. So Mimansa would say that not every sound string can mean dog. A random string like XYZ or PQRTS does not denote dog unless it has that intrinsic Shakti in itself. And there are many words that do inherently denote dog, like dog, Shwan or Hun. These are treated as different real Shabdas, each with its own intrinsic Shakti pointing to the same object, right? So convention is mainly about which inherently meaningful word a community uses or teaches or manifests. So social usage determines selection transmission, but it does not, not the meaning creation, right? Then we have we finish Shabda, and then we introduce Anuplabdhi, which is the non-perception. So uh, one last clarification about the Shabd Praman would be that according to Prabhakar, only the Vedic sentences count as Shabd Praman, because the Veda alone is intrinsically valid, and other speech is accepted only by inference from this trustworthy speakers. As per Kumaril, the word of any trustworthy speaker can count as Shabd Praman, because human testimony is a genuine Praman tool, right? So why is this important? Because Anuplabdhi will also show a characteristic. Uh, Kumaril expands, Praman tendency kind of thing. So author says that, Dr. Das Gupta. So Komaril admits a fifth kind of praman, that is anuplabdhi, which is used for knowing the non-existence, like there is no jug in this room. And why can't then non-existence be perceived by the senses? So to this, Komaril says that a perception requires contact between sense and object, but for a non-existent thing, no jug, there is nothing for the senses to contact. Therefore, non-existence cannot be perceived as an object by ordinary perception. So why not treat it as inference instead? So, some might propose that if there is no visual perception of jug, simply infer that there's no jug. To this, Kumaril replies that no, that inference already presupposes that you can cognize the want or absence of perception and want absence of existence. But how are these wants or absence themselves grasped? So this needs some explanation. So Kumaril's conclusion is that we need a separate praman for grasping the absence, that is anuplabdhi. Why? Because if you say that anuplabdhi is simply inference, you that presupposes that you can cognize want or absence of perception and want absence of existence. So but these, how exactly would you grasp these wants or absence? So we need a separate praman, right? Then we have a debate on Kumaril and Prabhakar on absence, which we will see